the mind is our imagination. We have a wonderful imagination, but what are we using those creative powers for?
So, welcome to the show, Sara Maude.
Thank you.
So, with your hypnotherapy, what was it like getting that set up? Because you moved to Edinburgh, if I've got that correct.
So initially, when I qualified, I was living in Brighton in East Sussex. So I set up my one-to-one practice as a solution-focused psychotherapist and hypnotherapist, and I was also trained in emotional freedom technique. So I worked with my one-to-one practice for 2 years there, and was also then doing the organizational training side of things because I had a huge network of people that I knew in the world of HR, and they were just so excited about what I was talking about. They were saying, can you come and deliver this training in our organization? So that's what I mean. It started quite organically. And then after 2 years, I moved to Edinburgh. So I've been in Edinburgh for 10, 11 years now. And so, yeah, I had to start up my practice again from scratch, but that's, sometimes part of the course. And yeah, it's been running itself for a long time now.
How come you had to re-establish your clinic?
Well, moving from Brighton, most of my clients were based in Brighton. And then when I moved to Edinburgh, I had to re-establish my practice up here. So although there were some clients that I was working with that were quite happy to work online, I needed new clients, new customers. But I think since the whole COVID situation, most of the people that I work with now are online. I have a handful of people that I work with on a one-to-one basis, but I think COVID opened up our ability to see that we can experience the kind of results that we're looking for, and it doesn't have to be in a face-to-face capacity.
Would you say it's more beneficial to do your hypnotherapy work online or in person?
Doesn't make any difference. And I would say that hypnotherapy is not just one thing that I do. I'm also a coach, I'm a solution focused psychotherapist, I'm an EFT practitioner. I use something called the MAP method, which is a very powerful transformational healing modality. So it's not just about hypnotherapy, but you don't have to be in the same room. The results are exactly the same.
So, what are the results you achieve with your clients then, if they're coming to you for the coaching, EFT, hypnotherapy, all that, and all the rest?
So they're not coming for that. That's just the particular modalities that I use. They're coming with whatever the problem is. So most of the people that I work with are experiencing high levels of anxiety. They may have experienced trauma, or they're just feeling very stuck in their life and are very limited by their mindset about the way that they think, that they can't quite see how to move forward. So the results are that together we're able to transform thought patterns, we're able to transform their beliefs, we're able to process old memories that perhaps have still got a lot of emotion attached to them, whether that's trauma, whether it's PTSD, whether it's CPTSD. It's creating a new mindset that supports them so that they're not trapped by anxious ways of thinking or very limited ways of thinking.
Would you say it's bringing those issues into the light?
Well, it's helping people to understand the way that their mind works. So yes, you are bringing insights and new understanding and perspective in allowing them to see things in a way that they hadn't been able to see them before.
And how does that work for people?
How do you mean?
So, when you bring the new perspectives into the light for people to see them in a way that they hadn't before, how do you help them achieve that?
Through questions. We all have an innate wisdom that we are connected to at any given moment in time, and that innate wisdom holds the answers that we're looking for, but we can't always see that because we're seeing our reality through our habitual thinking. So when I'm working with somebody, I'm asking them the kind of questions that lead to an insight, but I might also be explaining things. Take something like anxiety. A lot of people with anxiety think that, this is just me, it's just my anxious personality. I was born this way, I'm a natural born worrier. So when I'm able to provide them with the knowledge of the way that the mind works, the way that the brain works, how trauma is experienced, how limited thoughts and limited beliefs are created, and they have that knowledge, they're able to see that what they're experiencing isn't personal. It isn't anything about who they are and their identity. It's just that they've created these habitual patterns of thought that at that moment seemed very true and very real to them. So it's a combination of giving them the knowledge of the way that the mind works, who they really are as a true person and not limited by their identity and who they think they are. But it's also asking them those questions that lead to insights that give them that fresh thinking, that fresh perspective.
I wanted to dive into one of the things you said in one of your previous YouTube videos, that our core beliefs are formed before we can even read, write, walk, talk. And I'm just thinking, A, how does that come about? And B, how does that influence people's limiting beliefs and the stories they tell themselves?
So our core beliefs, the vast majority of our core beliefs are created by the age of 5. So if we think about a child doesn't have the cognitive ability, it doesn't have the access to the executive functions of the brain that allow us to really reframe things. So we're just seeing the world through a child's eyes. And children, when they're growing up, they have a tendency to internalize things, not necessarily at a conscious level. So say they have an experience, and it doesn't have to be a major experience, but maybe they're trying to explain something or tell a story to their mom and their dad, and maybe they're not getting the response that they're looking for. Maybe mum's just busy cooking the dinner and dad's doing something else. But if in that moment that child feels rejected, feels like they're not getting attention, they might then internalize that and make that mean something about them. Or if a child's grown up in an environment where mum and dad haven't always been present, they might have internalized that to mean something about themselves, like they're not good enough, they're not worthy. If they've gone through experiences, say, where they've been adopted, they might have developed thoughts and feelings about, again, not belonging, rejection, fears around abandonment. So those initial thoughts, which won't be conscious thoughts, they act like seeds that get planted. And so when they experience anything that reminds them of those original experiences, it just reinforces that thought. And all a belief is a thought that you keep thinking. But most people go through life with this limited thinking about themselves, which is then created into an identity. And if you never challenge that identity, if you never seek to move beyond who you think you are, then that's going to be the reality that you experience your life through. And so working with coaches or therapists, or even, just listening to podcasts or YouTube videos or reading particular books, we might hear something that sets our mind in a very different direction, where we think, actually, why is it that I think that I'm not good enough? Like, who gets to decide that? I get to decide that. But if you continue to feed thoughts about yourself that are very limiting, habitual thoughts, then that creates our experience, our inner reality.
Yeah, because I know you're saying with the seeds, they become roots, but the longer that particular seed's there, the deeper the root gets and the harder it is to get rid of said seed or said belief. How would you use your coaching hypnotherapy to on or dig up the roots, so to speak?
Well, it's not so much that they become roots, it's just that they become habitual patterns of thought. And about 90% of our thinking is habitual. So the unconscious mind works on pattern and repetition. So if we are not present to where our focus of attention is, then these habitual patterns of thought are effectively running the show at any one time. So part of it is about bringing these thoughts, these ideas that they have about themselves, it is about bringing that into the light. So a huge part of any transformation is self-awareness and being aware of where is it that you place your focus of attention. It isn't about getting rid of these habitual thought patterns in as much as it's about seeing them for what they really are. They're just habitual thought patterns. They say nothing about the truth of who they are. They say nothing about the reality. And the more that we can see that these thoughts are just that, they're just habitual patterns of thought, then the mind has its own self-correcting system, and we are given more choice about, I can use my energy, my mental energy, to keep focusing on these habitual thought patterns and stories and ideas about myself, or I can use the energy that is thought in a different way. And so when people get often tangled in their heads, more often than not, they're not even aware that they've got tangled into their heads. So the more that they create that level of self-awareness and recognize where they're placing their focus of attention on, and when they see that, that can be enough to just bring them back into the present moment. But what we can also do is using things like hypnotherapy or MAP or EFT, is we're taking very dominant thoughts that have got a dominant vibration to them, a dominant emotional vibration to them, and we're neutralizing them. And the more that we neutralize them, the less that we go and visit those old habitual thoughts in our mind, the more that we change those complex structures in the brain to experience life from a very different vantage point.
With changing your thoughts to a different vantage point, how do you help people to do that? Because one thing I've noticed personally in my own life is I'm resistant to some change because I've always experienced life in a certain way, and because I haven't had that perspective, it's difficult to change a thought into something more beneficial. What would you say to people like me in that situation, or just people watching or listening in general who are stuck in those patterns, but because they can't see the other side? Because it's always come across to me as do this, do that, and everything else, and your life will change. Trust me, because you've got no evidence of something else. You've always known a certain particular way.
So, well, the fact that you've already recognized that this way of doing, this way of being, this way of thinking, actually, it's not serving me. I keep going down this particular train of thought, and I keep finding myself in the same destination that actually I don't want to go on. It's a bit like getting on a train and finding yourself in a destination that you're like, oh, I'm back here again. So I think a big part of that is as I said, it's about raising your levels of awareness that I'm on this particular train of thought. But then it's also using our creative power, which is the mind, is our imagination. We have a wonderful imagination, but what are we using those creative powers for? So it's thinking, right, okay, if I keep finding myself on this train of thought, what is it I want to create instead? So my question to you would be, what is it that you want to experience?
Huh, open that can of worms. I guess a completely different, like, I don't want to share too much on the internet, but something a lot better than to my childhood. It wasn't fun. Let's just put it at that. Because I grew up in care. That's as much as I'm comfortable sharing over the internet.
That's fine. And I've worked with a lot of people that have grown up in care. And again, going back to what I said about childhood, people that have grown up in a care system, depending on what their experience was like, are more than likely to have had ideas about themselves. You know, one particular client that comes to my mind, she grew up very much thinking that she wasn't worthy, that her mum didn't love her, that she didn't belong, she wasn't good enough. You know, she created a story about her experience which made sense to her because of the environment that she was in, the situation that she was in. And some of the ways that she, the thing is with our beliefs is we're always looking for sort of almost confirmation bias. We're looking for evidence to back up that our beliefs, our kind of reference point for life and how we navigate life, is we're looking for evidence that that's the truth. So some of this is about thinking, you know what, my current reality, this is how I'm experiencing life moment to moment to moment. It's not serving me, it doesn't make me feel good. So what is it that I want? So when I first start working with a client, we get very clear on what is it that you want to create. If I could wave a magic wand and you could create whatever it is that you wanted to, what would that look like? What would let you know that you'd experience that? What changes would you see? Now, at this point, most conversations go, well, I don't want to feel anxious. I don't want to feel worthless. I don't want to wake up feeling this heaviness when I get out of bed. I don't want to feel dissatisfied. I don't want to feel this, that, and the other. And the point that I make to a client is that, well, that's great, but that doesn't actually tell me what it is that you want. That's only telling me what your current reality is and what you don't want to experience. And it's at that point that the penny drops. And they say, oh, right, okay, yeah, so I want to live a life where I am living my purpose. I want to be in a beautiful, compatible, loving relationship. I want to start my own business. I want to experience peace of mind. I want to feel like I've left my past in the past, and I want to feel hope and optimism about the future. I want to feel empowered. I want to feel confident. I want to, we start to put meat on the bones about what it is that they want to experience. And through that process, I'm also able to identify what their limiting thought patterns and their limiting beliefs are that's getting in the way of them experiencing that. So even just that focusing on what you do want can be a game changer in itself, because the thing is, Daniel, you have choice, you have free will about where you place your focus of attention. And it's like, how long are you going to, you or anybody that's listening to this, how long are you going to keep honoring these old thoughts and beliefs and identities that when you focus on them make you feel crap? You have free will as a human being, you have free will. And so when we can focus, even if it's just on one thing that makes us feel good, or one thought about ourselves that makes us feel good, and we keep focusing on that, then whatever we place our focus of attention on, energetically speaking, in terms of quantum flow, quantum physics, that's going to expand. So the more time that we spend focusing on what it is that we want and what we want to experience, and we hang out in those thoughts and feelings, well, that's going to grow. It is like planting those new seeds. But, thoughts are very powerful and beliefs are very powerful, especially if we've lived our lives by very limited thoughts and beliefs. And so what particular modalities do, especially if there's trauma involved, is healing modalities like hypnotherapy and MAP and EFT, is they're a little bit like a Trojan horse, in that they're going into the unconscious mind, which is running the show about 96, 98% of the time. And it's giving the unconscious, it's a bit like if you think of a computer, you're going in and you're creating new software. And you're giving it instructions to operate from a very different operating system. Does that make sense?
Yeah. How many thoughts subconsciously do we think a day? I think it's like 7,000, 10,000.
I think it's closer to 60,000.
How much does emotional intelligence play into belief systems?
Oh, hugely. Emotional intelligence is our ability to experience a situation and respond in an emotionally healthy way. Now, when we are faced with a situation, if we don't have presence and we've got this huge backstory, the brain goes back to, well, the last time I was in this situation, even if there's two seem like they're on opposite ends of the spectrum, this is how I responded. So when we're often in situations that we will feel a sense of emotion that actually has got nothing to do with that current situation and everything to do with the totality of all of our experiences. It's one of the reasons that I love using something called MAP. MAP stands for Make Anything Possible. And it's kind of a little bit like a combination of energy psychology and hypnosis, in that we are working with something called the superconscious mind to treat and heal parts of us that are angry, or parts of us that are frustrated or hurt or have been betrayed. We're able to treat these parts. We're able to treat the past memories that are this backlog of the totality of our experience. We're able to treat beliefs, assumptions, mindset barriers, everything. So I think it's kind of almost like going into your past history and having a really good clear out, that we're able to process things into our long-term memory storage, which is a big part of trauma, is putting these past memories. So if somebody has grown up with a lot of trauma and that trauma hasn't processed, then they still keep activating that trauma, and that trauma gets stored in the body. Anything that's unprocessed trauma, it gets stored in the body, which can lead to physical health conditions. So the beautiful thing about the way that I work is that we don't need to unpack somebody's past in the same way that maybe counseling does. We don't need to do an archaeological dig into somebody's life in order to treat whatever it is that needs to be treated, because our superconscious mind knows exactly what needs to be treated.
Really quickly, if you're enjoying this episode with Sara Maude, then please like, comment and subscribe so we can make the show even bigger for your entertainment. Alright, back to the episode. Would you say it's that stack of evidence that you were saying about, oh, this happened in the past, this has happened again, so here's the response, because they've done it before, So they'll just do it again. It's sort of similar to, I had it the other, I can't remember when I heard this, but it was, if you don't deal with trauma, then like you said, your body keeps score, but also your subconscious mind will engineer situations so where it keeps happening. So if you experience a lot of depression, you might want to get over it, but your subconscious mind will engineer the situation to where you're depressed, which is that repeating pattern. Would you say that can hold some people back as well, because they might be aware of it or may not, but it's just so frequent where it's their way of life?
Well, there's a couple of things here. So going back to what I said, the unconscious mind works on pattern and repetition. So when we are in an experience which reminds us unconsciously of past experiences, the feelings that we've experienced in those past situations, it's like, bang, we're back in the moment. With something like depression, it seems to us that we are repeating these patterns because we've created habitual thought patterns that act like perceptual filters. So you can be in a situation and these perceptual filters, they're a bit like wearing glasses or goggles. That's how you're experiencing what's happening in the moment. You know, everything that we experience in life is an internally generated perceptual map and model that you carry around inside your neurophysiology. So you could be in a completely different situation, but it doesn't seem like that because you've got these filter systems that is filtering that experience through these habitual thought patterns, through these beliefs. Depression, without going too much into depression is very black and white thinking. It's very all or nothing. And again, that's being created because we have kept feeding these beliefs. So if you've got a belief that you're a victim and that you're powerless to change your situation, well, that's going to seem very real to you because you believe it. Anything that we believe, it's going to seem real. And so if you've got that belief that you are powerless, that you are a victim of circumstance, then that's how you're going to experience any situation in any given moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It's also, I find, well, in my personal experience, I lost a ton of weight in a few years. I'm not saying this for any brownie points, I'm just using it as a reference point where I've got the belief I can change stuff. I've got the evidence I can, but some people might not have that. So how do you start breaking that down?
Evidence, do you mean?
Yeah, so personal evidence that you can change your beliefs. When I was younger, I used to believe you are only good. You're either good at something or you weren't. It's very mixed mindset of you're either good at maths or you're not. I'm not. Maths, I was never good at school. But as I've gotten older and with my fitness, where I changed that, my beliefs started to change. But that fitness is a stack of evidence I've got to say, well, you can change things. But some people might not have that. So how would you start breaking those beliefs down to where they can get the beliefs that they want to believe? So in my case, it was with my fitness, but with other people, it might be something else.
Well, as somebody that owns their own business, people might believe that they can't change, but at the point that they reach out to get help, what they're experiencing is, I can't stay in this state of mind, in this state of being. I can't continue to live my life the way that I am thinking and I am feeling. So I don't know if I can change, but other people around me, they seem to be able to change. So maybe I can open myself to the possibility that something can happen. Now, it might be that they've had a conversation with somebody that says, oh, I worked with such and such, they were amazing, or they might have done their own research. They might have put, a lot of people that come to me, they've just put into Google anxiety help Edinburgh, and they've stumbled across my website. And one of the biggest pages that is most visited, and I would say this is probably the same for most organisations, is the testimonials page. And if you went onto the testimonials page on my Sara Maude Hypnotherapy website, you would find a stack of testimonials and videos and case studies and interviews of people who have experienced transformation. So that, in the same way that we would look for evidence of, is this a nice destination to go on holiday? Is this a nice hotel? We believe whatever we're seeing. So even if that person is, I don't know if it's possible for me, my assertion would be that there is something within them that says, well, look here, you've got like however many tens, hundreds of testimonials on there. Maybe it's possible. Maybe I am willing to give this a go, because I just know I can't stay in this state of mind, in this state of being anymore. And is it very normal and very natural that, depending, if somebody's done absolutely no work on themselves at all, that they're probably going to have more thoughts and ideas about who they think they are and about what they think is possible. But a lot of the people that do come to me, they've maybe gone down counselling, they've maybe had some CBT, but they've not really got the results that they're looking for, because counselling, being honest, I'm not a huge fan of counselling, because counselling is a lot of regurgitating the past, which keeps people stuck in the past and going round and round and round in circles, which often just re-emphasizes their thoughts and their beliefs. But they might have experienced a bit of that. Maybe they've read a couple of self-help books. Problem with self-help books, and you've alluded to this, Daniel, is it's like, just think positively and everything will be all right. And it doesn't actually give them the tools, the techniques, to be able to transform things in the way that they would want, because a lot of people, they're trying to create transformation from their current level of thinking, from a cognitive, intellectual mind. So people don't have to fully believe that this is going to work, but within the first couple of sessions, certainly from my experience, I've probably held about 10,000 one-to-one sessions, it's okay. It's okay to have that mindset, because that's just a reflection of your current level of thinking. But when we've done a little bit of that therapeutic work, which is a bit like a Trojan horse, in that it goes in there and it starts to shift and change things, then people start to experience feeling differently, thinking differently, feeling lighter, more confident, happier, and they go, oh, this is quite good. Maybe this is possible. So it doesn't have to be that they go into any kind of process. You take fitness, somebody might work with a personal trainer because they want to shed weight, but they might have some doubts about that. And that's okay. I mean, weight loss is an interesting one, because there are a lot of people, and it's not an area that I work in, but there are a lot of people that struggle to lose weight. And that's because they've got very firm ideas about whether it's possible or whether it's not possible.
I know what you mean with going to get some extra help, because I fully agree with you with the counselling thing. I did it for 2 years, and yeah, that I might as well have not bothered. So I went and got some life coaching. This is how this podcast started, for anyone who's interested. But if I'm being completely honest, I've done coaching for less time than the counselling, and I've seen more positive results in my life. And then I went and got a PT because, well, I lost a bunch of weight, but it was just, I got to a certain point on my own, and it's going on beyond that, because you can only go so far on your own, sadly. But I know what you mean with like the mindset changes, because for me it feels really good, but I'm talking more in the moment. It can seem a bit daunting, because I remember when I had not my first session with my coach, it was the in discovery call, and I was a bit like, is this a good idea? Like, I was very hesitant because I never experienced anything like it before, and it's just, I couldn't live the way, like you said, I couldn't live the way I was at the time, but I didn't have, with my point of view, it was like, I'm not sure whether this is going to work. So it's just making that leap and reaching out can be quite difficult.
Well, what's the quote? That the journey of, I don't know if this is exactly the right quote, so anybody can feel free to re-quote me, but the journey of 1,000 steps, it starts with the first step. The only person that can make that decision that I'm ready to create change, don't know how it's going to happen, don't know who the right person is for me, any of that, it's about making that decision enough. I want something more than my current experience is giving me, and I can't quite do this on my own. I need somebody that can help to create that shift and that transformation. I need somebody, I think with a PT, it's great because you've got that level of accountability. You've got somebody championing you on. You've got somebody that can introduce you to different exercises, different techniques, different weights. They can push you. And sometimes left to our own devices, we don't necessarily push ourselves, because sometimes we get a bit comfortable with like, well, I'll change tomorrow. I'll start. It's not so bad. And that can go on for years and years and years before, the straw that breaks the camel's back, and we go, enough. I've had enough. I want something different. And I would say, again, only from my experience, but all the people that I've worked with over the last decade or more, when I ask the question, what made them decide to work with me? Absolutely 9 times out of 10, it was just gut instinct. I had, and I used to kind of laugh at this in my early days, because I would spend all this time developing a website, creating great content, blogs, all of that sort of stuff. And I would have people that would invest in, I don't do individual sessions, so I work with people over a period of time. I'd be like, what made you decide to work with me? Your picture. I just saw your picture and I knew you were the right person for me. I'm like, I've spent all this time on my website and you're telling me that. But that's what I mean by our innate wisdom. Our innate wisdom is that intuitive guidance system that lets us know that we've made the right decision. I think the one thing I would say about our intuitive guidance system is we can get that sense that something feels right in the moment. We just know. It's nothing that comes from the intellect, it's just a feeling. But what you might find, and especially when it comes to change and stepping out of your comfort zone, stepping away from your identity, is you might wake up the next morning and think, oh, have I done the right thing? Oh, I don't know if I've done the right thing. Maybe the coaching's not right for me. Maybe I need to wait. Maybe it's not the right time. All of this chatter comes up that if we believe that, if we listen to that, we can stall our progress, we can sabotage making that leap. Because the thing with change is the ego never wants change. Ego always wants to keep everything exactly as it is. And so when it comes to change and transformation, and I see this with my clients, is that when the ego senses that we're coming home to the truth of who we really are, it kind of goes, oh, okay, oh no, this won't do, and it will try and derail us. And again, self-awareness is a big part of that, and recognizing that the ego isn't something that you need to do battle with, but it can only work from a place of fear and separation. And so if it's not getting fed the thoughts and the beliefs that keep it alive, then it's being made redundant. It's not got a job. So I don't see the ego as something that we need to do battle with. It's got a job description. And that job description is to create that sense of separation from our true self. And so it will at times try and, derail us, even when we've felt that something is right. So again, the more that we have that awareness of what's going on and really tuning back into what's right for us, that innate guidance system will guide us.
No, you mean with the ego, because have you ever heard the concept of observing ego?
And what, carry on, give me a little bit more.
So it's, you observe when your ego's getting in the way or acting up. So
Oh, right, yes.
yeah, so I heard it from a guy called Dr. Paul John. I hope I get his surname right. Josiski. I learned, of all places, I learned it. Yeah, I don't think he's still, he's not dead, but I don't think he's still practicing anymore. But I learned this from a dating course of all places. It's quite, yeah, I know, quite interesting. But he was saying that when you observing ego, it's been a while, but the general idea is you watch it and you catch it in the act. So me personally, I can get pretty defensive when I see something which kind of clashes with beliefs. Stephen Bartlett said this thing at a talk I went to earlier this year, where if you have one piece of information, you're given a new piece of information which is contradictory, your mind can't actually put both side by side. So you can either get rid of the old one, put the new one in, or reject the new one and keep the old one in. And I kind of see with observing ego, it's similar, where when it really adds up for me, it'll try and keep the old information in. But for someone else, it might be slightly different. I also think it might be the mind's defense, well, mechanism for keeping you alive, because it's its job.
It is its job. I don't agree with what Steve Bartlett said. So the observing ego it's not about really observe. It is about observe. It's called the observing self. So that observing self, because who we are, Daniel, the truth of who we are is pure consciousness. So a wonderful way of looking at this is the book that Michael Singer wrote called The Surrender Experiment, where he started to become very aware of who's this voice in my head. And through his practice of meditation, he started to say, well, I can't observe a thought and think a thought at the same time. So who's the one that's observing all of this chatter in my head? And that is the truth of who we really are. That's pure consciousness. We are pure consciousness. The truth of who we really are comes before all of that crap that we've made up about ourselves. And so what we're able to do with that observing self is we're able to observe the ego, we're able to observe our beliefs, we're able to observe all of that mind chatter. We don't have to get entangled with it. That's kind of what mindfulness is just seeing that that's just noise. It's just noise in my head. And I can choose to focus on that. I can choose to believe it. I can choose to accept that as the truth, or I can just choose to just see it for what it really is. Coming back to what you were saying about when we are presented with a new piece of information, well, we don't, the options that were presented by Steve, that we have to either replace it or reject it, actually that's not true. Because if we are in an insight-friendly space, so if our mind is calm and we hear something that creates an insight. Like you could do that reading a book, listening to a podcast, listening to this interview. You hear something that creates that insight, that aha moment, that light bulb moment. Well, that leads to a fresh new understanding, a fresh new perspective, a way of seeing something you've never seen before. So with that, we're not replacing anything, we're not rejecting anything. But if we're not in an insight friendly space and somebody comes along with a piece of evidence and we are not open to that being true, well, then our egoic mind, our personal mind might just reject that and go, well, that's bollocks. No, I don't believe that. I'm not open to that. So yes, we're then rejecting that, but it's not about replacing one thing with another. It's about having when we have an insight, it raises our level of consciousness. And consciousness is a bit like being in a glass elevator. You get into that elevator, you can only see the landscape based on your current level of thinking. So when we have an insight, when something shifts, we go up the elevator. Now, there's no kind of getting to the top and going, right, that's it, I'm perfect, I'm solved. This is about a continuous journey. And so anybody that engages in coaching and therapy and whatever, it's never about a final destination. It's never about, right, I don't need to do any more work on myself. I know, I've been working on myself for, 13, 14, or longer than that. And it is about recognizing there is actually nothing to fix here, because the truth of who I really am is already whole. I'm not broken. I'm already complete. But it is about identifying the beliefs, the thoughts that are taking me away from my true self.
I might have accidentally butchered Stephen's quote when I tried to mix it with Dr. Paul's. Oops. But I wanted to ask you this. Did you ever hear that there was apparently a Harvard study, I haven't double checked this by the way, so take it with a grain of salt, where they got a bunch of people in who had certain beliefs, but they tried to tell them like actual facts and actual evidences of that why their belief was wrong, but because they were so hardwired in that belief, they just rejected the new evidence, although the evidence that they were presented was true. Do you ever hear that?
No.
I'm just wondering how much that mixes with not getting rid of the new information but integrating the new information, because I know apparently one of the hallmarks of intelligence is to admit that you were wrong about a previous form of beliefs or a system that you once held.
Well, the mind is always going to believe what it wants to believe based on its current level of thinking. So we know that the earth is round, but there are still people out there that believe it's flat.
That reminds me of a time I went into my old town and there was a stand of people going, they lied to you, the earth is flat. I'm like,
Exactly. Present whatever evidence, but if that person is insistent on their belief, but you take this back to what we're talking about, people will argue for their limitations. I can't do something because of that. And if you believe that to be true, that's going to be your experience. Change only comes about, as I said, when you are willing to accept that there's another possibility here.
That caught my eye, or ears. People fight for their limitations or their limiting beliefs.
How? They will argue for their limitations.
Yeah, how?
I can't lose weight because of this. I can't change because of this. I can't be calm because of this. I can't change because I had a traumatic childhood. I can't do something because I'm in a codependent relationship. I can't. Yeah, but. The problem is, is you keep telling that story. That's it.
Sounds like a self-fulfilling prophecy, doesn't it?
Well, it is.
Sara Maude, everyone, where can people find you if they want to book you for some coaching therapy or just want to get to know you more in general?
So there's a number of things, and you can put them in the link to this interview. So people can reach me at saramaudhypnotherapy.com. My training website is themindsolution.com. And there are a number of videos along the lines of what we've been talking about today on my YouTube channel, which if you pop in at Sara Maude, you will find me on there too.
Thank you for watching this episode with Sara Maude. If you enjoyed that episode where we talk a lot about mindset and limiting beliefs, I have another episode with not a therapist, but a personal trainer called Justin Klein right here, where we talk about the mindset around people's fitness and nutrition and getting them going with the gym. But if you want a different episode, maybe not on mindset, then I've got Kerry Headley-Cheney right here, where we talk about acting in both TV and film and theatre. Until next time.